Welcome everyone. My name is Stef Kuypers. I'm gonna introduce you to a theoretical model that I've been working on for about a year now, and I'm gonna focus on impact on behavior more than the technical aspect of it. I will briefly introduce the technicalities, but that's not gonna be the main focus of this presentation. Well, switch this on, it'll work better. We all know that in the world today we've got a couple of problems. There's pollutions, there's our climate problem, there's poverty, we're clear-cutting forests. I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but in Belgium the number of people that are going into a burnout is going through the roof. We currently have a world where the production capacity per inhabitant has been higher than at any time through history, and yet people are getting more stressed out by an overload of work. So when a lot of people say that a lot of these problems are the cause of greed of people, I disagree. To me, I think it's a systemic problem, and the systemic problem is driven by how our current monetary system works. The main thing is, if you manage to gather a lot of money, you can go sit back and it'll just be a money magnet to more money. It's that is a huge driver for trying to get your hands on a lot of money. And this is something that then creates greed and creates destructive behavior in our society. And a lot of that money is just going to go to the financial world and it's going to sit there. And these are the numbers for 2015. The total amount of coins and banknotes in the world was about $5 trillion. The total amount of narrow money, that is readily available money, including the coins and banknotes and money on people's accounts, was $28.6 trillion. This is actually the money that we do the real economy with. This is the money that we use in our daily transactions for economic purposes. This is the stock market, $70 trillion. Actually, the stocks themselves just change hands and make rich people richer. This is the estimated value of the derivative market, between $600 and $1,200 trillion. So it's very obvious this number is a huge attraction for people spending more money in the financial market so they can get the idea of being richer. This is actually how money flows throughout our current society. The orange arrows are the ones that actually have the highest flow. So it all flows to the financial markets, as the previous figures have shown. Now, it also affects our behavior. Research has been done, and if people handle money, afterwards they are measurably less willing to participate and less willing to help others. It starts at the age of 3. They've done this with 3-year-olds, and they could measure, they could observe that afterwards, after they've played with money, they was less willing to help other kids or collaborate with other kids. If they let them play with candy, this didn't happen. Although candy to 3-year-olds is arguably more worth than a paper bill, but they actually got the behavior taught to them through their parents. Not consciously, but subconsciously. So when I started with thinking about how can we do this differently, my initial goals were I wanted to disincentivize extreme hoarding. I wanted to make sure there was enough money for everyone so people weren't fighting about it. I wanted to have a system that was self-balancing, because our current monetary system is fragile as hell. And I wanted to systemically unplug it from our current system so that it couldn't be abused as another investment scheme. So I came up with this. There's 2 levels. You got a personal level, and there you create money from a basic income. Now, you could say that giving people a basic income from an economic perspective is actually valuing their worth as a person. society saying like, we believe that without you having to prove anything, you are worthy. So in an economic context, here is some money every month. This is your worth, and everyone gets the same, so everyone is equally worthy. Now, if you create new money every month, you also need to destroy it, because otherwise you get inflation, right? So you give everyone a saving limit, and if you go above that saving limit, you start paying a demurrage fee. I first actually thought of not having a saving limit, but then people started panicking, going like, oh, but then I cannot save anymore, and I will have to spend it all. And so I thought like, well, let's install a saving limit. And if you set it at about, in my documentation, I use about 25,000 circular euros as a limit. Most people are okay with that. There's a second level, and this is a societal level, a governance level. Currently, our governments always say like, oh, we don't have enough money to pay for social security, for healthcare, public transport, education. We'll have to cut budget on education. But these are services to actually create a well-functioning society. So why don't we just create the money that's needed for that? Now, there are what you need to do with, you need to make it transparent. Everyone needs to see where the money is being spent, otherwise you're gonna open up a can of worms, and you're gonna have a lot of fraud. Another thing you can do here is let your population decide where the money needs to be created for. So you actually shift political power to co-governance with your population. And here you can eliminate taxes except as a disincentive for stuff you don't want. Pollution, creating products that are non-recyclable or non-repairable. Well, you could come up with an entire list. Also, this list could also be co-decided with your population. So these are the mechanics. So what happens? What would happen if we would install this monetary system on a world basis? Well, you would solve some problems, because poverty would come at an end. Burnouts because of too much stress would probably decline, because people have now a way stronger negotiation position with their employers. So they can also relax a bit more. Lack of funding for healthcare would come at an end. Lack of funding for public transport would come at an end. Lack of funding for proper schooling would end. Actually, anything that says we don't have enough funds to do this for our society would end. But that's not all. You've also got positive impact on people's lives. You could actually spend time with loved ones again, something that we need. It's a long-standing research has shown that what makes people the most happy is building meaningful relationships. What we don't have time in this hectic society for is time for building meaningful relationships. So due to the basic income, we could start to make time for this again. People that do actual jobs that actually create something for society would get paid better. Currently, the garbage men are not giving a really high wage. But as the garbage strike in New York, I think in the beginning of the end of the 19th or beginning of the 20th century showed, if they go on strike for 9 days, everyone really starts panicking, because that was the length of the strike, after which the mayor caved in and gave them what they wanted. We would have a power shift, because people would now be co-deciding on what money is created for. So they would have a huge influence on governance of their society, which would create more involvement with people, which also create a more meaningful life, because currently there's a huge gap between politics and normal civilians. And maybe, just maybe, it might lead to a peaceful world, because people that lead content lives are harder to motivate to pick up arms and go shoot someone. It would also mean that there would be a shift in investment and consumption, because if you have a demurrage fee in your account, as soon as you go above 25,000, short-term capitalization becomes really uninteresting. If someone drops $5 million in your account, the demurrage fee is going to start taking effect immediately. You're going to see it melting away. You're going to be really stressed out to get rid of the money right away. So long-term investments with a regular return become way more interesting. Those are sustainable investments, usually. So sustainable investments become the more economically attractive investment. So it could go from a produce, use, throw away to a real circular economy by economic incentive. While today, there's still a huge economic incentive to just destroy the planet. Now, is everything solved with this? Of course not. This is something that would facilitate solutions, but it's not the end-all, be-all solution for everything. We would still need legislation that builds on top of this model. And because we don't need taxes to make government work, it actually opens up a lot of space for other complementary currencies to coexist with this model. That's it. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Would the demurrage fee be flat, or would it be incremental based on income and the percentage or rate of income, perhaps, that's made over a period of time?
Currently, I've made it flat, but this is something that could be thought about, that once you go above the next level, that your demurrage fee actually increases. So you disincentivize creating larger and larger income streams. Yeah, that would be a possibility. Another question?
Hi, thanks. I was wondering, because I was thinking only 25,000, right? Or was it that I can save? But what if I want to save more? What I will be buying assets, probably houses, land, and stuff. So there's one thing I think still missing, and that's thinking about inheritance rights and property rights. Maybe some extension to the model.
Well, the thing you get, I actually started discovering my model after I created it. After a while, your thinking shifts. Instead, we think in capital, like we go up, buy a house, and now I need $500,000 or euros to buy a house. But the person on the receiving end will not be happy with him receiving €500,000, because that will arrive on his account, and the demurrage fee is going to take effect. So he'd probably be more than happy to say, like, okay, you buy my house, why don't you pay me $1,000 a month over the next several years, and then the house is yours. So you don't have, you start thinking in monetary streams across the entire board instead of in capital.
You can also speculate, then you start to speculate not with money, but with assets, I think.
That's true. And this is something that I have been thinking about. And I guess you need to solve that in the legislation part. That the system itself will not be able to solve that.
I think one thing that is essential for it is a land reform, because to avoid that people invest in land and do just nothing with it or rent it or whatever, and this is actually what Sylvia Gesell proposed to land reform, so that land cannot be owned by a private person. I think that's missing.
Yeah, no, that would be in the legislation part. Now, the thing is, though, if you start acquiring land that you rent out, your income stream will increase, but your demurrage fee that you're going to pay will increase too. After a while, it's like, how much can you spend? Because you have to look at the psychological part of your money is constantly in movement. So after a while, you get like, say, you have $1.5 million that comes in every month. But there's a good chance you won't be able to spend $1.5 million a month. So most is just going to evaporate through your demurrage fee. So after a while, you go like, why am I doing all this trouble managing these assets when it just evaporates? This is an assumption. And this is something that needs to be looked into, but I think if we need to go to land reform, it has to be done in the legislation part. This is just the monetary system that lies underneath it.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I have a question about the basic income. Can you tell us how high it would be concerning the actual quantity of money, and which quantity of money would you take into account, like M0, M1, M2, or M3?
As for the amount of the basic income, I would be a proponent to give enough that people can have a decent life. A friend of mine wrote a book, Hyponymy, and he's doing research on how much basic income should you give someone. And they've come to a conclusion that it is actually better to give people more than the basics. That you give people enough that they can have a decent life. That they can go have a drink with friends every now and then, and go out for dinner, and once or twice a year go on a holiday. That it would put people more in a relaxed mode. And when you put people in a relaxed mode, they start doing stuff. Really, I mean, I actually live off a basic income because through inheritance, I own 4 houses. I live off the rent. It's because of that I started working on this. This is now a full-time job. Last week I was talking to a friend of mine. So like, I actually pay to work, which is true. Because I invested in the logo, in the website, coming to conferences, I'm traveling around. So if you give people the chance to develop themselves, I really do believe that they will start doing it. As about the amount of money, I haven't really thought about that yet.
Just mentioning about or talking about this basic income. I have very often in the past years, I meet people who are unemployed, who live on Hartz IV or whatever. So they have actually a regular income, but it's not actually they want to work. And I often say, okay, what would you do if you don't have to be concerned about your money? Don't you have something artistically or some other inspiration or aspirations? And then they finally start thinking about or telling me what they could do. And I said, well, okay, what stops you doing it now? So it's really something what I'm sure that people would start thinking new about what they are doing and not hanging around. So it was not a question.
So I like your idea, and I absolutely agree with it, to link the implementation of basic income to the demurrage, a monetary system with negative interest rates. I think one more thing should be added to this solution package, and this is what this current conference is about, and this is the monetary diversity. So for different kinds and scales of troubles and problems, this should be addressed by using different kinds of currencies. But it was not mentioned, if I remember.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's definitely not the intention that it becomes the new monopolistic world monetary system. It's actually, it has to work together with other specific goal-oriented currencies to solve everything. Because this will facilitate things a lot, but it will not solve everything. I don't think there's any one system that can, to be honest. The one thing I would also like to add is that this is scalable. You could start this on a city level. You could even start this without the governance part. And start implementing it there and then scale it up. A while ago I was thinking you could even go extremely local and have everyone determine their own basic income, their own savings limit, and their own demurrage fee. And the system can actually calculate an exchange rate between every single person economic system. Because if you don't do anything with your account will balance out at a certain point, where your demurrage fee equals your basic income. If you take that amount as a reference point to calculate your exchange rates, you could all actually, everyone could choose their own parameters. You could even take it that extreme. I don't think people would start doing that, but theoretically you could. Any more questions?
So what you basically said in the last sentence is that rather than having alternative social complementary currencies, you will have individual currencies.
Well, yeah, in a way, but they'd still be linked to each other with an exchange value. So you would actually have the same worth if you work through the exchange rates, but your perspective on your own how much money you have could change according to your own parameters. Any more questions?
Very simple question. Just wondering, is there anything about your proposal which couldn't be easily implemented within the already developing open money framework?
Well, actually, I've been talking to Michael with that, and they've been adding stuff in the open money framework so they could implement this. So it would be implementable within the open money framework, yeah. It's currently this like I said, this is a theoretical model. I haven't started implementing anything yet, so that's still on the table. Okay. This yeah.
Am I understanding from one of the other questions around retirement is that because there's this basic income that retirement isn't necessary? I mean, American Canadian mentality is save over $3-4 million just to be able to retire over a 20, 25, 30-year period. How does that work?
Well, actually, yeah, you wouldn't have to go on retirement anymore. I would even add your job market flexibility would increase tremendously, because since you're not paying taxes anymore, the financial services of your state don't have to control your income anymore, which means that you can go work a job at the bakery one day, and then you work at a consultancy firm 2 other days in the week, and then on Friday you go to a local restaurant, and the local restaurant has way more clients than they used to have, and they ask, like, is there no one who could help? And one of the clients could go like, yeah, I'll chip in for a couple of hours, and they get paid. So you could actually create a tremendously flexible job market, because there's a lot of red tape that disappears.
So what about the kickback from the consumptive current mentality and market? There's going to be a lot of people, like, where's the sociological perspective on how to implement this, knowing that at least the economy that I come from, which is extremely capitalistic, people like are in utter refusal to the even notion of complementary currencies, let alone a demarche on their, $7 million.
Well, I don't think we need to start with the people that own a lot of money. But as I've already, because this is a question I get a lot, and people say like, oh, but the rich people will be against it. Sure, but if you're a bakery and there's someone with €1 billion that comes to your shop and says like, I want to buy a loaf of bread, and you go like, yeah, I'm sorry, but I don't accept euros. That kind of breaks their power. It's if enough people from a grassroots perspective, if enough people start using it and then just say like, you know what, we don't want euros anymore or dollars or whatever, then they can have their billions in their bank accounts, but they can't do anything with it. It's also, usually when you ask people, what do you need to buy a house? The first answer you will get is money. So okay, I'll drop you with $10 billion in the center of the Sahara. Go build your house. It's impossible. To build a house, you need land, you need bricks or wood, and you need people that actually have the skill to build it. And money is a means to get through to that. So the entire thing with the rich people have all the power, yes, because we give it to them. They can only have that power if we allow them to. The few can only have the power over the many if the many allow the few to have that power.
It's about straw bale houses, buildings. It is very interesting when you think about it, how in these here you build houses and what it costs. And what in actually, when especially in Middle America, South America, when they work with straw bale, they actually work as a community to build it up, and it costs almost nothing. So like this, you really see the power of money. It's just nothing else than you collect something what you in general don't get by society. So community.
Yeah, it costs a lot of labor,
Yeah.
which is very expensive.
Okay, thank you.